Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Control, Exide Parkways Public Community Meeting. Our meeting today is scheduled from 3 to 5 p.m. Please note that all of our meeting materials are available in English and in Spanish and are accessible at dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Next slide. My name is Dion Falk, and I will be the facilitator for our community meeting today. I'm with the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and I am the Public Participation Specialist for the Exide Parkways project. You should now be able to see our PowerPoint presentation on your screen for today's meeting. For those of you participating by phone, you can access this PowerPoint presentation on our website at dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to go over our meeting guidelines with you. We want you to be aware that by participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. We will take comments related to today's presentations on the investigation report and the human health risk assessment and respond in writing at a later date. We ask that you limit your comments today to allow everyone the opportunity to participate during this meeting. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Next slide. To support language and captions this evening, simultaneous audio interpretation is available for this meeting. Click the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select the language. For Spanish only audio, by phone, please call 877-920-8432 and enter code 741-502#. Presentation slides are available in Spanish at dtsc.ca.gov/public forums. Automated closed captions have been turned on for this meeting. You can turn them off by clicking the CC icon at the bottom of your screen or moving the captions box. Please note that these captions are provided for convenience only and are not the official transcript of this meeting. Next slide, please. This public community meeting is being presented by the California Environmental Protection Agency Department, Toxic Substances Control, also known as DTSC. Our mission is to protect California's people and the environment from harmful effects of toxic substances by restoring contaminated resources, enforcing hazardous waste laws, reducing hazardous waste generation, and encouraging the manufacture of chemically safer products. Next slide. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide information on the Exide Parkways Investigation Report and Human Health Risk Assessment. In addition, we'd also like to get your feedback for the formal public comment period. For purposes of today's meeting, we ask that you limit your comments and questions to the Exide Parkways Investigation and Human Health Risk Assessment. All of your comments will be incorporated into our public comment period and become a part of the official public record. A written response will be shared at the end of the comment period. The presentation here today and all the meeting materials for the public comment period can be found at dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. For media inquiries, please direct your questions to our DTSC Public Information Officer, Barbara Zumwalt, at barbara.zumwalt@dtsc.ca.gov. Next slide, please. Our agenda for today's public community meeting will include presentations from Dwayne White, our DTSC Parkways Project Manager, who will be presenting on the Parkways investigation. We will then have a presentation from Shukla Roy Simon, our DTSC Senior Toxicologist, who will present on the Human Health Risk Assessment. After our DTSC presentations, we will then go into our formal public comment period. After we conclude the formal comment period, we will make our closing remarks and close the meeting. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Dwayne White, our DTSC Project Manager, to start his presentation. Dwayne?
Thank you, Dion. My name is Dwayne White, and I am the Project Manager for the Exide Parkways at DTSC. We are here to present our findings on the Parkways investigation in the vicinity of the former Exide facility and solicit your input so that our findings can be better assessed. We have completed the investigation and used the investigation results to complete a human health risk assessment. Both documents are available for public review and comment. I will be summarizing the results of the investigation, and Dr. Shukla Roy Simon, a DTSC senior toxicologist, will be presenting the results of the risk assessment. Slide 9, please. The parkways are a narrow strip of property in front of the sidewalks. They are owned by the local jurisdictions, but are often maintained and landscaped by the property owner. Slide 10, please. The cleanup process requires that the lead agency reach out to the community at key stages of the project. This graph illustrates the roadmap when it is typical for an agency to reach out to the community. They are all illustrated with blue stars. Public participation activities include, but is not limited to, mail-out surveys, stakeholder interviews, and review if any media has been conducted to gauge the community's interest in the site. DTSC completed the remedial investigation, which included a collection of a representative number of samples to adequately characterize the contamination. DTSC used investigation results to establish a potential risk associated with the concentrations found in the parkways. We are here today to present our findings and solicit your comments on the investigation and risk assessment. You can submit your comments today or until April 2nd. After the close of the comment period, DTSC will prepare a responsiveness summary and will make it available to the public on its website. DTSC will then finalize the investigation and risk assessment report. Accordingly, DTSC will amend the cleanup plan in California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, finalized in July of 2017. There will be another opportunity for the public to participate before the cleanup plan and CEQA are finalized. The draft amended cleanup plan and CEQA documents will be made available for public comment, which is shown here as star number 3. Once the cleanup plan and CEQA are finalized, DTSC will provide notice of when work is scheduled to begin, as shown as star number 4. Slide 11, please. The Parkways investigation is in an area known as a Preliminary Investigation Area, or PIA. That includes 7 jurisdictions within a 1.7-mile radius around the former Exide facility. To the north and northeast of the former facility includes the City of Los Angeles, the unincorporated County of Los Angeles, and the City of Commerce. And to the south and southwest includes the City of Vernon, City of Maywood, City of Huntington Park, and the City of Bell. DTSC sampled all parkways adjacent to sensitive uses, which includes residential homes, schools, parks, and daycares, within the PIA. Slide 12, please. While the contractor was sampling from May through November of 2019, you might have noticed the sample cart shown in the photo on the left. You'll notice the umbrella to provide shade. The photo on the right shows an employee using a hand auger to collect the samples within the parkways. Next slide, please. The investigation lasted from September 25th through November 8th of 2019. The table here shows dates of the investigation and the number of locations by jurisdiction. There are 8,124 locations. At each location, the contractor dug to 18 inches. 3 samples were collected at each location at the following depths: 0 to 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches, and 12 to 18 inches. The 0 to 6 inches were analyzed for lead and 5 additional metals: arsenic, antimony, copper, cadmium, and zinc. The 6 and 12-inch samples and 12 to 18-inch samples were analyzed for lead only. Slide 14, please. A total of 23,470 samples were analyzed at 8,124 locations. Lead was the primary contaminant. This graph shows lead concentrations distributed within the PIA. The higher lead concentrations are near the surface, or 0 to 6 inches, shown in the darker color, and decreases with depth. Part of this investigation included evaluation for a correlation study between the representative lead concentration at each of the residential homes and the adjacent parkway. The study concluded that there was no correlation between the residential home and adjacent parkway. Slide 15, please. So in conclusion, the investigation report shows the sample results for each local jurisdiction and a summary of the investigation. Lead was a predominant metal detected in the parkways. Lead concentrations are highest near the surface and decrease with depth. And there was no correlation between the lead concentrations in the parkways and lead concentrations in the adjacent residential properties. Slide 16, please. So DTSC used the 23,470 sample results to complete a risk assessment. Now I will turn over to my colleague, Dr. Shukla Roy-Simon, to talk about the human health risk assessment.
Thank you, Dwayne. Good evening and welcome to the public meeting. My name is Shukla Roy-Simon and I'm a senior toxicologist at DTSC. In the next few slides, I will be discussing the risk assessment process and linking information from the parkways to the process. Next slide, please. Before I go into the discussion about the health risk assessment, I would like to repeat what we heard from Dwayne about the investigation of parkways. Parkways are essentially a strip of unpaved land located next to the residences. They are typically 5 feet wide by 5 to 40 feet long and may be covered by grass. So this thin strip of land that you see next to the white car, that's the parkway. Next slide, please. So what is the purpose of a human health risk assessment? The purpose is to determine if concentrations of lead and other metals detected in soils at the parkway are of concern to residents who may come in contact with the soils. Next slide, please. So there are 4 steps to the risk assessment process. These are hazard identification, exposure assessment, toxicity assessment, and risk characterization. The schematic you see in this slide was developed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency in the 1980s and has been adopted not only nationally, but also by all the states. In the next few slides, I will be describing each of the 4 steps separately and hopefully showing you how we use information from the parkways in each of these steps of the risk assessment. Next slide, please. So the first step of the risk assessment process is hazard identification. In this step, we identify chemicals present in the soils. From our investigations at the Exide facility itself, we know that 6 metals, namely antimony, arsenic, cadmium, copper, lead, and zinc, were detected above screening levels in soils and dust at the Exide facility, with 3 of the metals, namely lead, arsenic, and antimony, being significantly above the screening levels. We sampled for all 6 metals in the offsite areas because there was a potential for emissions from the facility while it was still operational to contaminate offsite areas. In the photograph on the right, you see a white flag planted on the parkway. That is an example of a sampling location. Next slide, please. So the second step of the risk assessment process is exposure assessment. In this step, we answer the question, who comes in contact with the soils, how, and for how long? Since these parkways are located in residential areas, it is the child and adult residents who would come in contact with the parkways the most. Contact to soils may occur through the ingestion, dermal, and inhalation pathways. Ingestion of soils can occur, for example, by a child touching the surface and then they touch their face or mouth. Inhalation can occur by someone breathing in windblown dust from the parkways. Dermal contact is really not much of an issue for metals because the skin acts as a good protective barrier against absorption of these metals. To answer the question of how long people are typically at these parkways, we conducted a survey of the residents living in the area and asked them how many hours a day and how many days a week do they estimate being at these parkways. And we used this information in the risk assessment. Next slide, please. For the parkways, we did the risk assessment in 2 different ways. One, assuming that a resident could be at the parkways as frequently as they would in their yards, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 350 days a year for 26 years. And a second evaluation where we use information from the surveys that I just discussed in the previous slide. The results of that survey told us that the most number of hours that people may be at the parkways is 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. Next slide, please. So the third step of the risk assessment process is known as toxicity assessment. In this step, we determine what kinds of harmful effects may occur from exposure to the contaminants. So of the 6 metals we evaluated, arsenic and cadmium are classified as carcinogens, while antimony, copper, and zinc are classified as non-carcinogens. We evaluated lead by blood lead modeling, and one of the reasons for this is that no safe level of lead has been identified by either the US EPA or other regulatory agencies. Therefore, non-cancer toxicity values could not be derived for lead. The toxicity values for hundreds of chemicals have been derived by the California EPA and the US EPA and are available on their websites. And this is what we used in the risk assessment for the parkways, according to established methodologies. Next slide, please. So this is the 4th and last step of the risk assessment process, and it is known as risk characterization. In this step, information from the first 3 steps are combined to calculate cancer risk and non-cancer hazards for chemicals detected at the site. The equations you see On the left-hand side of the slide are generic equations for calculating cancer risks and non-cancer hazards. As I mentioned, for lead, we do blood lead modeling. As you can see in the Venn diagram on the right-hand side of the slide, results from the risk characterization step are then used by risk managers to make decisions for the site. For example, if the risks or hazards or estimated blood lead levels are unacceptable, cleanup will be conducted at the parkways. This is also the time when risk managers will seek input from the public. Public input is vital to making decisions at the site, and this is where we are right now. So if you have any information you would like to provide us, for example, in terms of parkway usage or any other aspect of the project, please feel free to contact us and provide that information. We welcome your feedback. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned in earlier slides, we conducted the risk assessment in two different ways. The first one assuming that people would be at the parkways the same amount of time they would be in their yards, which is 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And the second one assuming that they would be at the parkways 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this was based on information we gathered through the surveys. So the only difference between the two evaluations is really the number of hours a day spent on the parkways. Next slide, please. So these are the results of the risk assessment. In the initial assessment, we found that of the 8,124 locations sampled, 6,425 locations had concentrations of lead above the residential screening level of 80 parts per million. Arsenic was above the screening level of 12 parts per million in 240 locations. Of those 240 locations, only 36 locations were not in the same locations as where lead was above the screening level. The other metals were above residential screening levels in only 8 locations. So now moving over to the site-specific assessment on the right-hand side, we did this evaluation only for lead because as you saw, this was by far the metal with the most locations exceeding the screening levels in the initial assessment. We calculated a site-specific screening level for lead using DTSC's lead spread model, where we used 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, instead of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That screening level came out to be 360 parts per million. That's about 4 times higher than the 80 parts per million that's used for residential screening. Since this value is close to the commercial screening level for lead, and there may be workers at the parkways, such as landscape or utility workers, DTSC's management decided to use the commercial screening level of 318 to screen the sampling locations. And we found that 899 locations had lead concentrations above that 380 parts per million value. We hope this information has been helpful to you, and we welcome your feedback as to the two assessments, because this really is critical to our decision-making process. Now I will turn it back over to Mr. Dwayne White, who will explain the risk management process. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukla. So Shukla presented the two scenarios in the risk assessment. Scenario 1, the cleanup goal was set at a default of 80 parts per million, which assumes a resident is at the parkways 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For scenario 2, the cleanup goal was calculated based on the input received from the community and how frequently they use the parkways. That cleanup goal was 360. However, in abundance of caution, DTSC set the cleanup goal at a lower concentration of 318 parts per million, the commercial level. This table shows the total number of parkway locations that require cleanup and a breakdown by jurisdictions for each of the two scenarios. For scenario 1, a total of 6,425 locations will require remediation. For scenario 2, a total of 899 locations will require cleanup. Slide 28, please. DTSC evaluated each of the scenarios against the 9 federal criteria and 6 state criteria. The federal criteria in the National Oil and Hazardous Substance Pollution Contingency Plan, also known as the NCP, is shown, and similarly, the state criteria is shown as an asterisk on the corresponding row. The first two are the mandatory requirements: overall protection of human health and the environment, and compliance with applicable, relevant, and appropriate requirements. Both scenarios are protective of human health and the environment and comply with the applicable, relevant, and appropriate requirements. The next 5 criteria are known as the balancing criteria. For long-term effectiveness and performance, both scenarios offer similar effectiveness and performance. For reduction in toxicity, mobility, or volume, scenario 1 would generate approximately 6 times more volume compared to scenario 2. Both scenarios are similar for short-term effectiveness. For implementability, scenario 1 will require more time to implement the remedy compared to scenario 2. For costs, scenario 1 will cost significantly more than scenario 2. The last two are known as the modifying criteria: community acceptance and state acceptance. For community acceptance, we are here today to solicit your comments on the investigation report and the human health risk assessment. Both documents are final draft. DTSC has not approved the reports, and DTSC has not made a decision on which of the 2 scenarios to implement. DTSC must take into account all 8 criteria and approve the scenario that best meets the 9 criteria. Following the comment period, DTSC will modify the documents accordingly, respond to the comments in the responsiveness summary, and finalize both documents. After incorporating the public's input on the investigation and risk assessment, DTSC will prepare the appropriate document to comply with the cleanup plan and CEQA. DTSC appreciates your attendance in today's meeting. Slide 28-9, please. At this time, I'll hand it off to Dion.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. I appreciate that. I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank Shukla and Dwayne for their presentations here today. I would also like to thank our Spanish audio interpreter, Madeline Rios, for her Spanish interpretation services during this meeting. As a reminder, you can view all documents for this public meeting period and comment period by going to dtsc.ca.gov/residential-parkways-soil-sampling. Then scroll down to the Exide Parkway supporting documentation section. You can also visit DTSC's website for up-to-date information by going to dtsc.ca.gov/Exide-home. Lastly, you can call our toll-free hotline anytime at 877-244-3887. Next slide, please. Thank you. We will now go into our formal public comment period. During this part of our meeting, we will take all of your comments and include them in the public comment period. As a reminder, the public comment period started February 1st and ends on April 2nd. DTSC will respond to all of your comments and questions after April 2nd at a later date. Next slide, please. There are 3 ways that you can make a comment here today. If you're participating on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. You will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you are on your phone, you can press *9 to join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to speak. You can then press *6 to unmute your line. Lastly, if you would like to use the Q&A feature, click the tab at the bottom of your screen and type in your comment. We will do our very best to allow everyone to make a comment here today. I will now start taking your comments. Okay, great. I see I am going to the Zoom raised hand feature, and I see that Miguel Ramos has a question. So Miguel, I'm going to ask you if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question or make your comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Miguel Ramos. I'm with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. And I just wanted to provide some public comment on specifically the exposure assessment. And I know I took a look at your survey, and it really doesn't emphasize what the community would want in terms of the parkway. It's just really kind of like a baseline of how it's currently being used, but not really determining like the extent of what could be in that parkway, right? As you may know, this community has suffered many years of environmental injustice. And so
Yes.
I think it's important to really think about doing the right thing and trying to remediate as many parkways as possible to put them at the standard as any other community, right? That doesn't have that contamination. And I would also like to emphasize that the county has a tree planting initiative that extends into unincorporated LA County. And I know that one of the county's initiatives is also to expand tree canopy. And in expanding tree canopy, it welcomes people to be out in the street, out in the parkways. And so that's another thing to consider is like, what are the current planning efforts that are happening within these communities, right? And just like the lack of park space that they already have, right? And how parkways could be an opportunity for people to be out in their, little park space that they do have. I also like to add that, in many communities, parkways end up being places where people like to garden and plant things and cultural foods and all that kind of stuff. And so I just hope that you could emphasize the importance to kind of project and try to create an assessment that considers the best opportunity for community members to engage in the parkway space, especially it being a public health issue. I hope that you all can address this in your final plan. And that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. We appreciate that. Those are very important comments, and it will definitely go and be incorporated. And so just wanted to thank you again for participating and for making a comment. Next, I'd like to go to John V. John V, you have your hand raised. You can feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. You guys offered plenty of information on the situation, but I'm being asked via text message by my mother-in-law what's going on. And I don't believe it was really, the information was offered in layman's terms for the average folk to be able to understand. And the risk assessment with regard to the individual implies that you're only at risk if you're hanging out in the dirt. If the stuff's in the air and it's landing in the dirt, it's also landing on cars and on the buildings. If we choose to hire an independent company to come in and test the soil and other areas on the property and also go to see a doctor and check toxicity levels within our bodies. Is this going to be taken into consideration?
Right. Oh, thank you so much, Don, for your comment. We will be responding to all of your comments. There will all be incorporated, and then we're going to respond to all your questions and comments after the formal comment period ends on April 2nd. But thank you so much for your comments. We appreciate it. And what I'd like to do now is go to the Q&A box. And I wanted to go ahead and read a comment. Jennifer Ganata has a comment. Let me go ahead and read it in regards to the funding options for the scenarios, whether it's addressing the 6,425 locations or the 899 locations. Could you let us know where the funding would be coming from in order to accomplish the cleanup? Again, that's a question by Jennifer Ganata, Communities for a Better Environment. Thank you so much for your question, Jennifer, and that will be incorporated into our comments, and we will make sure that we address that after the comment period ends on April 2nd. I'm going to go back to the raised hand feature. I see that Kelsey Maines has a question or a comment. So I'm going to go ahead and allow you to unmute, Kelsey, and make your comment today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kelsey. Go right ahead.
Great. So my name's Kelsey. I'm a student with UCLA Law's Environmental Law Clinic. And after our review of the draft HHRA, we identified some concerns regarding DTSC's methods. In particular, we believe that the lack of the community survey responses undermines DTSC's conclusions about certain site-specific cleanup goals. So we know DTSC surveyed community members, as you mentioned, to determine how they interacted with the parkways and for how long. But the total response rate for that survey was only 3%. And we also didn't see any discussion in any detail of any community outreach efforts made to disseminate the survey and encourage more responses. But because of that extremely low response rate, we feel that there's no guarantee that the survey responses truly represent how community members are using the parkways. DTSC has relied on those minimal survey results to set site-specific cleanup goals on the theory that residents are spending much less time interacting with the parkways than the residential exposure duration used to calculate the maximum state levels of lead for unrestricted residential use. But DTSC might be sorely underestimating community exposure because of the limited number of survey results. Specifically, as a result of this, the proposed site-specific cleanup under cleanup scenario 2 would still leave parkways in conditions that are potentially dangerous to community members' health. This scenario, which is being presented as the more cost-effective scenario, could result in the continued presence of lead in parkways at nearly 4 times the state level for unrestricted residential use. So this would not only leave the level of lead in the soil that would burden current and future property owners, but most importantly, it highlights the disparity between safety standards for wealthier communities versus what the state views as acceptable in low-income communities of color. We don't believe that the limited survey responses are sufficient to justify DTSC's cleanup scenario 2, particularly because of the serious discrepancies between the site-specific cleanup goals and state unrestricted residential use levels. If cleanup goals are going to exceed those levels, DTSC needs to do a better job engaging with the community to give more certainty that site-specific levels will really be safe, especially for children and other sensitive community members. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. I appreciate your comments here today, and they will be incorporated. What I'd like to do now is move on to Mr. Rafael Yanez. I would like to invite you, Rafael, to go ahead and unmute your line and ask your question or make your comment.
Hi, so my name is Rafael Yanez. I'm with the City of Los Angeles and LA San Environmental Justice Group. So in any case, what I'd like to do is just second all that the previous speaker just said. We want to make sure that all of the residents in and around the surrounding communities including those resident in the city of LA, enjoy the Parkway at a level that is equal to many of the other communities throughout the Southern California area, and any higher levels of lead than normal should be addressed and taken care of. And that I'm going to keep it brief because she did a fantastic job of summarizing our concerns as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rafael. We appreciate your comments. They will be incorporated. I'm going to go back and check the Q&A feature and see if I have any more questions or comments there, and I do not. At this time, I'd like to ask and invite everyone that has a comment or what has a question to go ahead and go ahead and ask your question now or make your comment. Again, if you are participating via Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. You will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you are on your phone, you can press *9 to join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to speak. And at that time, you can go ahead and press your *6 to unmute your line. And then also you can make any comments or ask any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Just type it in and I will read it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and wait a few more seconds and see if we have any more comments or questions. At this time, while I'm waiting to see if we have any more comments or questions, I'd like to see if we have any questions on the Spanish line. So I'm going to ask Madeline Rios to indicate if we have any questions on the Spanish line. Teresa, go ahead if there's a question.
Sí. Yes, there is one question. Madeline, if you could please translate.
Okay. Was that the conclusion of the comment, Madeline? Mhm. Thank you so much, Madeline. Appreciate that. Please let her know that her comment will be included in our comment period, and we will make sure it's incorporated and we respond to it. Thank you. Was there any other questions, Teresa, from the Spanish line, or was that it?
No, there was just one question.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I do see a question in the comment box, the Q&A box. It is from ALG4M. And the question is, will there be any more revisions on the results per properties? Again, will there be any more revisions on the results per properties? So thank you so much for the comment and typing that into the comment box. We will go ahead and incorporate that and respond to that during our reporting out period. I do not see any more comments or questions in the comment box. I'm going to go now to the raised hand feature or the call-in section and see if I have any questions or hands raised. Okay, I don't see any. Teresa, I'm gonna check in with you one more time and see if we have any more questions from the Spanish line.
None so far, thank you.
Okay, all right, I do have a question in the comment box that popped up. It says, hello, how do I know if my property is involved? Thank you so much, Anna. That's Anna Augustine. Thank you so much for your question, Anna. And what we'll do is we will incorporate that and you will have a response for that question. And thank you for typing that in, taking the time to type that in. All right, I'm gonna wait just a little while longer. I will go ahead and repeat the instructions for making a comment or asking a question, just to make sure that folks that called in a little later have that direction. So if you are participating on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen. You will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you are on your phone, you can press *9 to join the phone queue. I'll say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to speak, and then you can press *6 to unmute your line. If you would like to use the Q&A box, that's at the bottom of your screen. Just feel free to type in your comment or your question. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in the Q&A box. And I don't see any questions via the raised hand feature or the phone line. So I guess at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and close out the formal comment period. And, oh, you do? Okay, great. Please go ahead. Teresa, are you there? Teresa? Hold on one second. We want to get Teresa on the line.
Okay, Dion, I
Okay.
apologize for the wait. She had a specific question in regards to her property,
Okay.
not at Parkway.
Okay,
So,
got you. So thank you so much, Teresa. If you could just let her know that we are addressing the investigation report of the Parkways and the human health risk assessment today. And so we're really taking comments and questions on the 2 presentations that we had here today. So I do see I'm going to move over. I'm going to let Teresa respond to our Spanish question. I'm going to move over to Anna Augustine. She has another comment. Her comment is, by the way, or a question. By the way, do I have to provide my address in order for you to respond about my exposure of my property in April? No, Anna, you do not need to provide your address for you to get a response. That is not necessary, but we will respond, to your previous question, but you do not need to provide your address. You're very welcome, Anna. Okay, I don't see any hands raised and I don't see any more questions or comments in the comment box. Teresa, I'd like to go back over to you and see if we have any questions on the Spanish line.
No, not at this time.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna wait just a couple more seconds and see if anyone has any other comments or questions that they like to make. Okay. I don't see any more hands raised or questions in the comment box. So I think that at this time we are able to go ahead and close the formal comment period. I do want to thank you all for your comments and your questions. Okay, so now that we've closed the formal comment period, DTSC wants to invite you to stay involved and connected with the Exide Parkways project. We ask that you talk to your neighbors and also provide comments today, like a lot of you have, and we thank you for it. Also, get on our mailing list. You just go to the website that I previously provided and join our mailing list. We'd love to make sure that you continue to stay informed. For comments via email, you can feel free to email Dwayne White directly by going to Dwayne.White at dtsc.ca.gov, or you can feel free to email me directly, Dion Falk. That's dion.falk at dtsc.ca.gov. Or you can go to our comment line and make a comment directly by calling in. That number is 747-248-2905. Again, that number is 747-248-2905. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the conclusion of our public meeting. I do want to thank you for joining us. I know that all of you are very busy, and we just really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today. Again, I'd also like to make sure I thank our staff that provided presentations here today, Dwayne White and Shook Leroy Seaman, for their presentations. And I'd also like to thank Madeline Rios for the Spanish interpretation services. Thank you all so much. As a reminder, we will have our next public meeting on March 18th at 6 p.m. I hope this meeting was informative for you and that you were able to make a comment here today. If you were not able to make a comment, feel free to utilize the email address or the phone line that I provided to you previously to make your comments or get your questions in. At this point, I just want to thank you again. Please be safe and have a very good evening. Thank you for joining us here today.